The movie opens with the Ryman family watching a fashion show. Lisa Ryman, an American shoe designer, has been married for 25 years to Peter Ryman, a software CEO from Northern Ireland. They live in Cambridge, though Lisa often travels to Milan for work. The couple are seated with their daughter Abigail, and the three of them seem to enjoy the spectacle on stage. After the show, Abigail steps outside to meet her boyfriend George. Her parents watch from a distance, and it becomes clear that they have differing opinions about him.
Завидуешь? Пойдем.
Lisa appears accepting of George, while Peter is skeptical and believes George is not good enough for their daughter. Suddenly, their conversation drifts to their own marriage. Lisa asks Peter if he thinks two people can truly live together for their entire lives. If Peter senses a red flag, he does not show it. Instead, he skirts around the topic with a vague reply. But Lisa does not let it go. She asks again in a different way, and Peter responds with a question of his own. He asks if their marriage is in trouble. Lisa looks away, which is not a good sign, but in a steady voice she says there is no problem. Peter begins to worry. He then presses Lisa to explain why she is asking all these questions. She says she is thinking about Abigail and George and how they should be planning marriage soon. Peter sighs in relief, and they continue dinner. Soon after, Lisa asks Peter if he ever wishes he had the chance to be with someone else. Peter says no. He states firmly that he has only ever wanted to be with her. When Lisa urges him to be completely honest, he repeats his answer, then adds a joke about perhaps never meeting the right person to knock boots with. Lisa gives a half-hearted laugh. Then she says she loves him, because if she did not, she would leave. She would not take anything with her, not even property. She would just walk away and start over. Peter replies calmly and says, "All right then." In the next scene, Lisa and Peter return home. When Peter attempts to be intimate with her, she recoils in a strange way.
Я буду звонить.
The next moment jumps forward, and we see Peter packing up Lisa's belongings. From his disheveled appearance and his brief but emotional dialogue with Abigail, it becomes clear that Lisa has passed away. Abigail hands Peter a note with the message Lake Como written on it. She says she found it tucked inside one of her mother's shoes, and that Lisa had wanted him to have it. Peter's distant expression suggests that he understands the meaning of the message. As he moves through the quiet house, he hears Lisa's phone beep. When he picks it up, there is a voicemail. A man's voice speaks softly and says he knows he should not be calling, but he misses her and just wants to hear her voice again because it has been too long. The man speaks with such tenderness that Peter becomes suspicious. He tries to distract himself but cannot let go of what he has heard. That night, he opens Lisa's laptop. At first, he sees familiar family photographs showing moments from across the years. Then, he comes across a folder titled Love. It is password protected, and this only deepens his doubts and growing jealousy. To make matters worse, he finds an email from someone named Ralph. Peter immediately believes it is Lisa's co-worker of the same name, and concludes that this man must be her secret lover. Convinced that Lisa was having an affair, he confronts Ralph at the workplace, but he soon discovers that it is a different Ralph entirely. Still shaken, Peter decides to speak to Abigail. She is reluctant to say anything, as she does not want to tarnish her mother's memory. Hurt by his daughter's reaction and unable to make sense of her refusal to speak openly, Peter storms out of her house. Rain falls in sheets, heavy and unrelenting, soaking through his coat in seconds. Abigail had offered him a warm guest room, dry clothes, and a place to rest his head, but Peter refused. Pride, pain, and something darker drive him forward as he steps into the downpour without looking back. At home, the house feels emptier without Lisa. Peter sits at his desk and opens Lisa's laptop. Ralph's email still lingers in her inbox like an open wound. Peter stares at it for a moment, then begins typing. His reply is clipped and bitter. It reads, "The Lisa you loved is no longer here." There is no greeting, no sign-off, no emotion except what drips between the words. The next morning, Peter goes to his company headquarters.
Питер,
Спасибо, Гейл.
He summons a young employee named Joy into his office. The lights are low and the blinds half drawn. Peter speaks with measured authority. He wants her to trace Ralph's IP address. Joy hesitates. She knows what he is asking crosses a line, but Peter is her boss. His voice remains steady, but his eyes give her pause. When she asks for more details, Peter provides them, though his last comment stuns her. He says that he wants to kill Ralph. Joy stares at him, unsure whether he is serious. Peter gives no sign either way. She laughs nervously, hoping it is a joke. He says nothing more, but before she leaves, he makes one thing very clear. He wants her to be discreet. Ralph must not know that someone is looking for him. That evening, Peter returns home and checks his email. Ralph has responded. The message is tender and emotional. Ralph insists that their love cannot be gone. He says he feels alive again. It is clear from the tone and content that Ralph believes he is still speaking with Lisa. Peter reads the message in silence, his hand gripping the desk. A sharp knot twists in his stomach. He returns to the password-protected folder on Lisa's computer. The folder marked Love. He types in everything he can think of. Their anniversary, Abigail's birthday, the name of their first dog. Nothing works. Then he remembers the note Abigail had given him. Lake Como. His fingers type the words slowly. The screen blinks and the folder opens. The contents of the folder gut him. Photo after photo shows Lisa with another man. They are smiling, touching, laughing. In one, she is leaning her head on his shoulder. In another, they are together in bed. Peter cannot breathe. He sits back in his chair, stunned. The last shred of doubt he held onto was dissolved mercilessly. Lisa's betrayal is no longer an idea or a suspicion. It is here, and it is really real. While Peter is reeling from this shell-shocking confirmation, Joy sends him the results. Ralph is in Milan. Peter stares at the address, then acts without hesitation. He tells one colleague to book him a flight to Milan. He orders another one named Rick to procure him a gun. They try to dissuade him, expressing their concerns. They ask questions, but he does not answer. Peter brushes them off. He is calm. Too calm. In the next scene, Peter arrives in Milan. It is unclear whether he obtained the gun. He rents an apartment and keeps a low profile. From there, he begins to track Ralph Cortez. Ralph is half Spanish, half English, with an air of cosmopolitan ease. Peter follows him quietly, watching, waiting. Each day, Peter studies the photos from the folder. The memories cut deeper the longer he looks. He remembers one night in particular. Lisa had once told him during pillow talk that she could never leave him. Peter, then oblivious and half asleep, had asked why she ever would. Now the memory echoes differently, and Peter has a better understanding of that conversation now.
Добрый день, сэр. Здравствуйте.
One day, Peter and Ralph meet at a chess cafe, get acquainted, and play a game. During their match, Peter asks seemingly harmless questions, and Ralph opens up. Ralph talks about his mother, about her struggles and triumphs. He then describes the cities he has lived in and the reasons he left each one. Peter listens, and at the right moment, Peter mentions that he is from Cambridge. Ralph's eyes light up. He says that his girlfriend is from Cambridge too. He speaks about her as though she were still alive. He goes further to state that she is in fashion and that she designs shoes. He gushes about their first time. He met her in Milan. He describes her red shoes, the first thing he noticed about her, the same red shoes that once held the note Peter now cannot forget. Peter musters all the self-control in the world and asks how long ago their first meeting was, and Ralph replies that he met Lisa about 12 years ago. Wind is knocked out of Peter, but he forges ahead and asks when Ralph and his girlfriend last met. Ralph smiles and says 9 months ago, and then he unwittingly twists the knife in Peter's wound by saying that he believes he would see her again soon. Meanwhile, Abigail was not at peace. The weight of her last conversation with her father clung to her like smoke from a smoldering fire. Something in his voice had unsettled her. Something in the way he stormed off had been too unlike him. When her calls went unanswered and her texts sat unread, anxiety bloomed in her chest. Unable to rest, she made her way to his house with George, her partner, hoping perhaps he had cooled off and returned. What they found instead was a house still and hollow, a place marked by absence. On his desk was Lisa's phone, the one with the voicemail alert. When Abigail played it, the voice that rang through the room was not her father's. It was Ralph's, the same man from the email, speaking tenderly and with hope. The effect on Abigail was immediate and visceral. Something long buried had just cracked open. Elsewhere, the scene shifts back to Milan. Peter is resting on a random building reminiscing. Lisa exists now only in memories and photographs, but her presence hangs over him like a fog. He remembers her in those quiet hours. Lisa, late at night, typing away on her laptop while wrapped in a shawl. He would ask what she was doing, and she would always answer with the same word. Work. Always work. Time passes, and Peter meets Ralph again at the same chess cafe.
Вы точно хотите это сделать?
They sit together as before, the board between them, their match, a dance of tactics and tension. Peter, unable to help himself, asks further questions about the tryst, to which Ralph confesses that he had pursued Lisa, that even when she turned him away, he had insisted. Even though he knew she was married, he could not stop. He says he loved her so much it made him reckless. The scene then shifts to moments of heated encounters between Lisa and Ralph. Ralph is such a passionate man. His antics make observers cheer. The following scene then shows Lisa returning to Cambridge from one of those Milan trips. Peter welcomes her by the door, holding a wine bottle and glass in hand. Lisa hugs him, saying she's happy to see him. And, as if to twist a knife in the viewer's heart, the scene where Lisa and Peter share a gentle, welcome hug is alternated with the scene where she hugs Ralph passionately. That night, Peter cannot sleep. He lies awake as the memories swirl and transform. What should have been sweet has turned sour. What ought to be sacred now feels soiled. What once gave him peace now stirs only grief. In the following days, Peter and Ralph take their curious friendship away from the chess cafe as they stroll through the streets of Milan. The city is beautiful, but Peter barely sees it. When Ralph asks about Peter's family, Peter tells the truth but frames it carefully. He says he is married and has a daughter. He leaves out Lisa's name. Ralph listens attentively, then shares that he has a son. He is not married, but he speaks of fatherhood with pride. They return to the cafe one evening and play another match. Peter wins this time. But just as he checkmates Ralph, a call comes through on Ralph's phone. When Ralph sees the ID, he gasps and says Lisa's name aloud. Peter flinches. The pain is sharp and immediate. Ralph stands and hurries outside, trying to catch a better signal. He calls her name again and again, but there is no voice, only silence. Then the call drops. What Ralph does not know is that it was Abigail who had called using her mother's phone. In other words, Abigail has confirmed her mother's affair. She and George leave Peter's house and head for his office. They have to find him. Meanwhile, Peter and Ralph continue their meetings. Ralph tells Peter that he had spoken to his favorite shoe designer, the woman whom he calls the most beautiful in the world. Ralph says he could never love anyone else. A curious Peter then asks if Ralph spoke with her. Ralph replies that she acknowledged his call. Peter laughs. Not because it is funny, but because nothing makes sense anymore. Ralph wins that round of chess. Then he makes a joke about horses and women, says both require good hands. Peter sees red. He imagines Ralph with Lisa. He imagines too much. Then the pressure bursts. He scatters the chess pieces and curses at Ralph. Ralph stares at him in confusion. He thinks Peter is angry about the match. A regulator steps in, demanding a fine for the chaos. While Ralph darts away, Peter pays in full, then rushes out in pursuit.
Что она сказала?
As he moves through the street, his eyes scan for Ralph, but instead, he sees Abigail. His daughter runs into him, and she looks just as lost as he feels. It is at this point that Abigail confesses to her father that she was the one who reached Ralph using her mother's phone. Peter is stunned by this revelation, but does not linger on the shock. Instead, he shares his own secret, that he plays chess with Ralph almost every day. Abigail is left in stunned silence, unsure how to react to the strange intimacy that has developed between her father and her mother's lover. Peter seems to sense her confusion and perhaps even her quiet judgment, for he quickly moves to insult Ralph, calling attention to what he describes as monstrous hands. Abigail remains composed and replies calmly that if she were him, she does not think she would want to know any more than he already does. Peter, annoyed by what he perceives as her lack of emotional investment, retorts bitterly that the betrayal does not seem to cut her as deeply. With that, he turns and walks away, and she follows him. In the following scene, the grieving father and daughter are shown at their temporary apartment. Peter brings out his laptop and shows Abigail a series of photos stored in a folder labeled Love. These photos include images of Ralph, perhaps captured during one of his meetings with Lisa. Abigail observes the images and notes that Ralph does not seem to have the monstrous hands her father had described. Peter, irked by her reaction, proceeds to open another folder containing intimate emails that Ralph had been sending to Lisa. The contents of these emails overwhelm Abigail. She stands up, unable to look any longer, and walks away from the laptop. Yet, Peter is not done. His obsession will not let him rest. He continues to read from the emails, and it is implied that he has even gone so far as to respond to Ralph while pretending to be Lisa. This deeply unsettles Abigail. Her heart breaks both for her mother, who cannot defend herself, and for her father, who appears to be losing his grip on reality. She returns and pleads with him to stop. She begs him to let things go. But Peter has much more to vent. He laments bitterly that he had always been faithful to Lisa, that he believed their bond was real, and that they shared everything. He remarks that she may have always been someone else, someone he never really knew at all. Unable to hear any more, Abigail leaves the room. Still obsessed and clearly unwilling to let go, Peter decides to visit Ralph at his apartment. He arrives and is taken aback to discover that Ralph is not the wealthy, sophisticated man he had imagined. In reality, Ralph is a building superintendent living in a modest and poorly maintained dwelling. Ralph is startled to see Peter standing in his home, but relaxes quickly, still under the illusion that Peter is a friend. Ralph is dressed in dirty overalls and appears embarrassed by his surroundings, but attempts to maintain his dignity. He invites Peter to make himself at home and tries to offer hospitality despite the circumstances. As they speak, Ralph bends down to pick something up from the floor. At that moment, Peter sees a hammer nearby. He picks it up, and for a tense stretch of time, he contemplates using it. His grip tightens, his body freezes, and rage courses through his veins. But ultimately, he releases the hammer and flees the apartment in haste. As he returns home, Peter runs into Abigail, who confronts him about his dangerous fixation. She pleads with him to let go, to release the pain and stop spiraling into obsession. Though Peter hears her, he remains unresolved. He listens but cannot yet surrender his anger. Instead, he poses as Lisa one final time. Under the guise of her identity, he sends Ralph an email proposing a meeting at Lake Como. Ralph, exhilarated by the message, agrees without hesitation. Eager to impress, he invites Peter to a lavish apartment which he pretends is his own. It is likely a borrowed space, chosen to cover up the humiliation of his previous exposure. Ralph beams with excitement and announces that Lisa has agreed to meet with him. He then shares his plan to throw a magnificent dinner party to mark the occasion and perhaps finally claim Lisa for good. Peter, quietly observant, notes Ralph's body language and discerns that he is in need of funds to make this dream a reality. Wanting to ensure that his own scheme plays out without interruption, Peter offers to fund the dinner himself. He hands over a generous amount in cash. Ralph, touched and elated, expresses profound gratitude. He promises to make the evening unforgettable. On the appointed evening, Ralph arrives at the venue, elegantly dressed in clothes bought with Peter's money. He walks with confidence and anticipation. The staff inform him that his guest has already arrived and is waiting. Ralph proceeds toward the reserved table with a wide smile, likely rehearsing the words he will say to the woman he believes still loves him. But as he approaches, he freezes in place. Seated at the table is not Lisa, but Peter. The joy drains from Ralph's face as Peter calmly reveals the truth. He tells Ralph that Lisa was his wife and that she passed away from cancer. This shatters whatever fantasy Ralph had clung to. There is no Lisa waiting with open arms, no romantic reunion at Lake Como, only a grieving husband with vengeance in his heart. All veils torn away, the men sit opposite each other, facing the ugly truth laid bare between them. The conversation is not hurried, it is slow, weighted by years of silence, confusion, and unresolved pain. Peter recounts how Lisa had refused treatment for her cancer. She had declined chemotherapy. She had even turned down surgery. Despite the rapid progression of her illness and the weight of what she must have endured, she never complained. She never made a fuss. Lisa had borne her pain with grace. Peter does not speak with admiration. He speaks with frustration and confusion. He cannot understand why she did not try to fight for the future, why she did not at least make the effort to stay. It is a grief made heavier by the belief that she had given up too soon, and by the fact that her silence left him stranded in the dark. Across from him, Ralph is still reeling from the shock of what Peter knows. His initial instinct is to defend Lisa. He speaks slowly, perhaps to steady himself, but also because he knows the truth he is about to voice may hurt Peter even more. He tells Peter that Lisa had always lived in the moment, that had always been her way, to choose presence over worry, feeling over fear. Ralph says her choice not to fight was valid. She made her decision as she had always made them, from the center of her heart. And even if the rest of the world does not understand, he chooses to respect it. He insists Peter should try to do the same. There are flashbacks. The screen shifts gently to scenes of Peter caring for Lisa during her final days. The air is thick with sorrow, but there are also soft moments of intimacy. In one such moment, Lisa looks at Peter and says that he makes her happy. It is an honest moment, simple yet piercing. Peter listens and then asks her to write down the place where she was happiest. He gives her a small piece of paper and pencil. Not long after, she writes down Lake Como and hands Abigail the note. She instructs Abigail to hide it in a specific shoe, the very one she had been wearing on the day she first met Ralph.
Положи это в одну из моих красных туфель в моей комнате.
Back in the present, Peter recalls this moment. That day, he had guessed, for no particular reason, that they would both name the same place as their happiest. Perhaps a foolish hope. Perhaps not. But in his heart, he had believed they were always aligned. Ralph, still curious and still hurting, asks Peter how and when he first learned of the affair. Peter does not hesitate. He tells Ralph about the folder he found on Lisa's laptop, a folder labeled Love. Ralph questions if Peter read his emails, and Peter answers that he read all of them. Ralph feels violated, his privacy stripped away. But the moment passes, and he forgets his anger. There is a flicker of vulnerability in him, something more real than anything he has shown so far. He confesses that the wealth he had once flaunted was all a lie, a performance he had hoped would be enough. He admits he was drowning in debt when Lisa met him, but instead of running, she chose to stay. She knew everything, and still, she loved him. She even paid off his debts. Not because he asked, but because she wanted to. That, he says, is proof enough of her love. Peter does not speak. He is quiet, but his silence is not dismissive. He senses the truth of what Ralph has said. It settles between them, bitter and heavy, a truth that both hurts and heals. And with that, Peter leaves, wounded, quiet, changed. There is another flashback. A scene that plays for the viewer's benefit. Abigail is seated beside Lisa, who is already frail and weak. She is complaining about Peter and his opposition to George, about how Peter clings too tightly to ideals that no longer hold. Their conversation meanders, touching on grief, loyalty, and family. But then Abigail says something that lingers. She declares that it is impossible to be in love with two people at the same time. Lisa listens, says nothing, but something shifts in her face. And it is then, in that quiet moment, that she reaches for paper and writes down Lake Como. She gives it to Abigail and tells her to place it in the shoe, a message not just for Peter, but for the end, for what she knew may come after her. Time passes in the present, and eventually Peter, softened by memory and reflection, decides to attend the dinner Ralph has arranged in Lisa's honor. It is not easy for him, but he brings Abigail, and he brings George. The dinner is held in a warm space, surrounded by Lisa's friends, people who knew and loved her. Peter watches as laughter and sorrow blend in the air, and when the time comes, he stands to speak. His anger at Ralph is still there, buried just beneath the surface, but he chooses not to give it power. Instead, he gives a heartfelt toast to Lisa, to the woman she was, to the life she led, and to the love she gave. In doing so, he reconciles with Abigail. He extends a hand of welcome to George. He makes space for what Lisa had tried in her quiet way to leave behind. A family not bound by convention, but by the people who choose to love one another despite the mess. And perhaps Lisa knew it would play out this way. Perhaps that is why she wrote down Lake Como, not as a symbol of where she had been happiest, but as a message to both men, to show them that she had loved them both, not perfectly, but truly.
Что это была за чушь про туфли?
And that in her absence, they would need to find a way forward, together or apart, but forward nonetheless. The final scenes are quiet. Ralph begins a new life as a hospital orderly in London. It is simple work, but honest, and perhaps that is what he needs most, a chance to start again without illusion. Meanwhile, Peter returns home. He is not alone. Abigail is beside him, and George too. They carry the weight of loss, but also the quiet peace of closure. The silence Lisa once kept has broken, and what is left is memory, love, and the path ahead, the end.